Good morning. Good morning, Zoomies, too. Welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I am the Reverend Lydia Ferrante Roseberry. I'm the minister of this beautiful congregation. My father's parents immigrated to the United States in 1920 and then returned to Italy in 1932 when my father was 4 years old. My father returned to the United States with my mother after he married her in 1959. I am joined today by Service Associate Mary Gibb, and we have a special musical guest today as well, Tom Kual. Thank you, Tom, for being here, as well as our own fellowship regulars, Julie Morris and Clara Kelly. As we continue our summer series on spiritual exploration and justice making, we are today talking about immigration justice, which is one of our congregation's social justice initiatives for the coming year. I am delighted to welcome Ingrid Ancalada Latorre and Diana Solares this morning. Ingrid lived in sanctuary at the UU Church of Boulder for 4 years until last fall when she was granted a 1-year stay of deportation, which is quickly coming to an end. A stay of deportation means that she could leave the building and travel around freely without fear of being deported. I know, yay. But and Diana Solares is her advocate and the coordinator for the Boulder County Sanctuary Coalition, of which we are a part. I also want to mention our behind-the-scenes tech team today, Meridian Mensch, Deborah Mensch, and Karen Gridglack on Zoom. Hi, Karen. And of course, all of you. It is so beautiful to be in your presence this morning. Everyone who is speaking or singing without a mask has tested negative for COVID today. So we just so you know, we're following our policies.
Good morning. I'm Mary Gibb. My grandparents and great-grandparents immigrated from Lithuania and Ukraine, both part of the Russian Empire at that time. They were fortunate enough to come before 1921, when the United States developed quotas limiting immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe. My daughter-in-law's parents immigrated from China and Taiwan when they were in college in the early 1970s. They were able to do that at that time, and as a result, I have a beautiful daughter-in-law who lives in Longmont. As I say the welcome words today, I invite those of you on Zoom to shift into gallery mode if you haven't already done so, and scroll through the screens so you can experience the beauty of this congregation. Those in person, look around and see who you can recognize beneath their masks. You are all welcome here in the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes, and sizes that come together in your uniqueness. You are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. In all the ways you make your living and the places you are from, you are welcome here. With all of the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here today. No matter how long you are away, nor how soon you will return, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. We acknowledge that the land surrounding us is the stolen territory of the Arapaho people, and that many tribes roam freely on this land for millennia, before the arrival of white settlers. We commit ourselves to being a center for spiritual exploration and justice-making, and to anti-racism and anti-oppression work within and beyond our congregation.
If you're new here, we are very glad you found us and hope that in this community that is both in person and virtual, you can experience the joy and vibrancy and commitment to justice of this congregation. Each Sunday is different here, so please come back a few times to really get to know us. And we also have many opportunities during the week for people to be engaged. Those on Zoom can check out the links in the chat to help you get connected. And those in person can find a newcomer QR code on the back of your hymnal, which will also help you get connected. Finally, if there's any visitors on Zoom and you'd like to introduce yourself, just please do so in the chat. We just love to know who is amongst us. And if there's any visitors in the sanctuary who'd like to introduce yourselves, we can pass the mic to you and you can just tell us your name and where you live. Is there anybody who'd like to do so? Mary, could you bring me up? Yeah, can you bring the mic over to her? Thank you. We put it on the microphone so everybody can hear. Our Zoomies and our roomies. Everybody point at the newcomer.
Hi, I'm Chris Meekum. I moved over from Salt Lake City, where I attended the First Unitarian Church there a few years ago, and now I'm living in Sunrise at Flatirons and became friends with Lois and Ann. And I actually was here visiting my daughter, who lives in Louisville, and attended this church 15 years ago, where I met a really dear friend. So I'm really happy to be here, and I think your sanctuary is just beautiful.
Thank you. There's another person back there, Mary. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Leist, and I'm the daughter of Marilyn Leist right here. She lives in Lafayette, and she loves this church. This is the first time that I'm here. I live in Paradise in Middle Florida, Tampa, and I am a preacher also. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else? I'm going to check the chat real quick, see if I can introduce anybody from the chat. I don't think I can do that quickly enough. Thank you. So roomies are invited to stay for coffee hour and conversation, being mindful of physical distancing following the service. COVID transmissions are getting high again. It's a very confusing time once again. So please do keep your well-fitted mask on as much as possible. And everyone is asked to keep a mask on in the sanctuary so people know when they're in here that people who have not tested this morning will be masked. We'll light our chalice this morning. Please join me in saying our chalice lighting words. And if you're on Zoom, and have a home chalice, you can light it and tell us in the chat where your chalice is lit from. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. I invite you now to let the sound of this second bowl draw you deeper into the present moment and into the company of this gathered community.
Today, for our opening words, I'm going to read a poem by poet Juan Felipe Herrera. Juan Felipe Herrera is a Chicano poet, the son of migrant workers, who was the U.S. National Poet Laureate from 2015 to 2017. Over the last 50 years, his participation in the Chicano arts movement and his work in writing and performance arts has made him a leading voice on the Mexican American and indigenous experience. I'm reading his poem, Every Day We Get More Illegal. Yet, the peach tree still rises and falls with fruit and without. Birds eat it. The sparrows fight. Our desert burns with trash and drugs. It also breathes and sprouts, vines and maguey. Laws pass, laws with scientific walls, detention cells, husband with son, the wife and daughter who married a citizen. They stay behind, broken, slashed, unpowdered in the apartment to deal out the day and the puzzles. Another law, then another Mexican, Indian, spirit exile. Migration. Sky. The grass is mowed, then blown by a machine. Sidewalks are empty, clean, and the red-shouldered hawk peers down from an abandoned wooden dome in an empty field. It is all in between the light. Every day, this changes a little. Yesterday, homeless and without papers, Alberto left for Denver. A Greyhound bus, he said, where they don't check you. Walking, working, under the silver darkness, walking, working with our mind, our life.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
I'm Tom Cowell. I'm a member of Mountain View Friends meeting, the Quaker meeting in Denver. All four of my grandparents immigrated through New York Harbor between 1890 and 1915. They came from Germany and from Poland, which was under the Tsarist Empire domination at that time. I just want to say a word about my babcia, my Polish grandmother. Her name was Sofia Mankiewicz Kowalewska. She left school in the 4th grade to work in the potato fields to help support her younger siblings and her family. She immigrated when she was 18 into New York Harbor. She may have been sent for by my grandfather, Vladislav Kowalewski. She cleaned a bank in Brooklyn for 30 years at night. That's how she raised her 3 boys. And that's how she came to own the tenement building, the Brownstone in Brooklyn. A little help from a sympathetic banker that she got to know. She sent 3 boys into combat in the South Pacific and North Africa and Europe, and they all came back. My father Edward Kovalevsky. Changed the name to Koval because my mother didn't want to be, didn't want that name. They found the Quakers because they were looking for a pacifist and feminist congregation. And that's how I got here. Julie?
I'm Sarah Kelly, and I have quite a few European ancestors, but I do know that I had relatives that fled France as Huguenots and came to Canada, and then before 1920, illegally crossed into Michigan without any consequences. So, yeah.
Well, somos el barco. This is when Ingrid was honoring us at the Quaker meeting in Denver for, a little over a year, was it? When Anibal was very tiny baby. This became to be maybe her favorite song that we would sing in the Metro Sanctuary Coalition meetings and gatherings. To me, this song has two sets of meanings in me, and one of them is, the immigrant connection. So many of our families came on boats, right? And some came walking through the desert, and some came on airplanes. The other meaning is if you, as you sing these words, if you kind of let them sink in, we are the boat and we are the sea that we sail on, and we're in it together. We are part of each other.
The stream sings it to the river sings it to the sea sings it to the boat that carries you and me. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me.
All right, let's have y'all see if you can join in this chorus. Can you do that?
If you'd like to rise in body or spirit, you may, if that suits you.
The stream sings it to the river sings it to the sea sings it to the boat that carries you and me. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. El arroyo le canta al río, el río le canta al mar, y el mar le canta al barco que lejos nos va a llevar. Somos Vegas and me. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. Now the boat that we are sailing in was built by many hands. And sea that we are sailing on touches many sands. Somos el barco, somos el mar. Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. El barco en que navegamos fue hecho por muchas manos. El mar que ahora surcamos, cada tierra tocará. Somos el barco, somos el mar.
Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat,
We are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me.
I could sing that song all day long. And we'll be singing it some more today, so. It was a decade ago, 2012. Just last month, actually, just a few weeks ago. It was right after the state of Arizona passed SB 1070. Do you remember that? It gave local police agencies unprecedented authority to stop and detain anyone who might look undocumented. Boo, right? Including, so this is what it did. Local police could demand papers and investigate immigration status if they suspected that a person might be undocumented. Local police could, for the first time, arrest individuals without a warrant if they believed they were a deportable immigrant. Immigrants who failed to carry federal registration papers were guilty of a state crime for the first time. And immigrants who sought to accept work without authorization were also guilty of a state crime. Now that year, the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly, or it's also called GA, was scheduled for Phoenix. And a lot of people were boycotting Phoenix during that time after this law was passed. And our General Assembly, our national folks, made a decision that instead we would go and have it be a justice GA. And I will never, ever forget those waving hands. I could just see the fingertips, barely visible from the narrow windows that were at the top of this big cinder block building. They were like ceiling height windows, very narrow, and we could see these hands at the Phoenix Detention Center. And the hands were waving because they heard us. The detainees in there had heard us. 1,000 or so Unitarian Universalists chanting outside. They couldn't see our bright yellow standing on the side of love t-shirts or our battery-operated candles. But they'd heard us through their cinder block prison, and they wanted us to know. They heard us singing protest songs at this vigil in their honor, telling them they were not forgotten. Now, these were the days of Sheriff Joe Arpaio's infamous tent cities, where he proudly, remember this, detained thousands of migrants, far too many to fit in the cinder block detention center with those narrow windows at ceiling height. They were detained, the others, which we could not see, were detained in tents, in 100-degree weather, without enough food or water, without due process, without legal representation, without their basic human rights being respected. And so I ask you, how can the inherent worth and dignity of people be respected under these conditions? I left that experience saying to myself, now that I know, what do I do? And that's a mantra that I keep with me as I keep awakening to the injustices of our world. So this experience led me to a Border Links trip where my heart was broken open again and again. Border Links is an organization down in Tucson, Arizona that does these learning experiences. We got to witness the disparities that you could see from what the U.S. side of the border looked like to what the Mexican side of the border looked like two different worlds, the haves and the have-nots. We got to experience the cruelty of our immigration system, and many stories of people helping one another, of people going into the desert and carrying water, bringing water jugs for the migrants, and then other people going and shooting bullet holes in the watering cans. And then people going back the next day and bringing water to the migrants. We got to experience people in well-to-do neighborhoods who would open their doors to the migrants who were coming through, much to the dismay of their fearful neighbors. But they did it. Now, human beings are a migratory species. We move around. Since we could walk on two legs, and even before, we've been on the move for better food, for better shelter, for safety for ourselves and our children. And it's only the political borders created by us humans that create immigrants instead of migrants. And then the polarizing question of who's one of us and who's not. This country's history of immigration policy is steeped in racism, colonialism, imperialism, and a dehumanizing othering. And this country also has led the destabilization of Central America, which has robbed indigenous people there of their way of life, their food, their shelter, and their safety. But I remind us, migration is a part of the human experience. And deep down, people all deserve basic human dignity. And also, deep down, we are a caring species. And when we can lift that up from all the hurt that we've experienced in our lives, the hurt that wants us to hurt others, we can care even more deeply than we ever have.
With a chorus in between and after.
Oh, the voyage has been long and hard, and yet we're sailing still with a ha sido dura y aún seguimos navegando, desafiando las tormentas y así siempre seguiremos. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me.
Good morning. I'm Bob Norris. Many of you know me because I've been part of the Immigration Task Force ever since one Sunday morning when Mary Gibb pulled me over and said, how would you like to do something interesting? So that's been about 6 years, and for the last 4.5 or 5 years, I've been privileged to know Ingrid and work with her. So about my family's immigration, they're all white, so they haven't had to suffer some of the indignities, and they're all from Northern Europe, so they haven't had to deal with some of the indignities that some of the Southern Europeans had to. So my Scottish ancestors, I know, lived at one time in Halifax, Canada, I guess before they were asked to move on back to Scotland and then back to this country. My father's English parents came over in the early 1900s. Don't know too much about that. My German ancestors I know absolutely nothing about. I do know a little bit about my Danish ancestors. I know the men were very clever. They were documented, but probably illegal, because they had one set of papers that one of them would come over with and mail it back. So we think we know what that family name is, but we're not too sure. Anyway, we're all here. So I was kind of interested a little bit about what Lydia was saying about what kind of triggered that meeting down in Arizona about the papers laws. I have some really good friends that came up from Arizona because of that papers law, only to find out we already had it here. It was Senate Bill 90. Show me your papers law, we called it. But because of CERC and a lot of people that really cared a lot, we got rid of it. So we no longer have it. So we no longer have a lot of bad laws and a lot of good immigration laws because people care about it. So on to what I had planned to say. So conditions at the border have only gotten worse since Lydia's trip down there. The walls that are there were designed to discourage migrants from crossing because they were likely to die doing so. Then they were built further and further from the populated areas, so that immigrants had to walk many miles in the desert so that immigrants would die. More and more died in larger numbers. Many who died crossing that border were those who had been deported for things like traffic tickets. So they returned to the border, many of them dying in the desert. Immigrants facing deportation proceedings have little chance of winning their cases, even though they've been sitting in that down in Aurora in the detention center for as much as 2 years, in very poor conditions in privately owned detention centers. Many of them that are deported to countries other than where they came from, which makes it very difficult for them. Once across the border, immigrants, men, women, and children, are likely to have to walk through many miles of deserts that they are unfamiliar with. They cannot carry enough water to reach the destination, and many find and drink unsafe water, which ultimately kills many of them. There are other dangers as well: snakes, cactus, and blisters, dehydration, and more. We have seen large numbers of families separated by the U.S. Border Patrol with very little effort to track where the children have been sent. This continues today. We know Casa de Paz made many efforts to reunite those families. Immigrants have been coming not just from Central and South America that we hear about, but from Haiti, Asian Pacific countries, and Northern Africa. Immigrants at the border are seldom provided an attorney and processed in hearings as many as 20 at a time, with very little chance of having a fair hearing. And lately we hear about asylum seekers have been refused to stay in this country, sent south of the border in very unsafe conditions where food can be so scarce, and many women have been raped. As with all immigrant issues, including immigration reform and maintaining DACA, which is at risk now, the challenges result from racism, misinformation, politics, and inaction by the concerned. Thank you.
So with our hopes we set the sails to face the winds once more, and with our hearts we chart the waters never sailed before. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. Con nuestros esperanzas altas velas la aventamos, y con nuestros corazones nuevas rutas exploramos. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. Thanks, guys.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Ingrid Encalada La Torre. Inmigré el año 2000 a los Estados Unidos. Vine por mi sueño americano huyendo de la pobreza de mi país. Fue un viaje difícil de días, semanas, meses. Dejé a toda mi familia en Perú. Llegué a Colorado el año 2000 a la casa de mis tíos. El año 2003 decidí comprar un seguro social en el mercado negro. El sistema me obligó ya que no podía trabajar ni estudiar. No calificaba para muchos trabajos ni escuelas. Empecé a trabajar en un nursing home cuidando personas mayores. Lavaba trastes, un trabajo duro, fui a la escuela a estudiar, ayudaba a mis padres, a mi familia en Perú. El 2010 fui arrestada por la policía local por usar documentos falsos. Duré 3 meses encerrada sin poder ver a mi hijo mayor Brian, que tenía 2 años, ya que era el único en ese tiempo. Separarme de él me rompía el alma, ya que era madre soltera. Y hasta el momento ya no volver a verlo, ya que me decían que me iban a deportar a mi país natal. Era el sostén de mi familia. Un día me habló la sheriff y me dijo que pagaron mi fianza. Eres libre. Fue una sorpresa para mí. En la madrugada me liberaron, pero inmigración estaba esperándome, donde me esposaron de pies a cabeza, como si yo fuera una criminal. Pagué al gobierno del IRS miles de dólares y 4 años de multa. Tuve un permiso de trabajo por 4 años. El 2016 negaron mi caso. El 2017 vino la pesadilla para mí y mi comunidad, ya que negaron mi caso de inmigración y ganó el expresidente Trump, ya que era un doble golpe para el pueblo. El 2017 me refugié yo y mi familia en la iglesia BVUUF Service de cuáqueros, que está en Denver. Estuve por 6 meses, me otorgaron una estadía legal por 5 meses para presentarme a la corte sin miedo. Y en ese tiempo estuve buscando el perdón del gobernador John Hickenlooper, donde no hubo éxito y me lo negó. No tuve otra opción que seguir luchando por la injusticia. Volví a reingresar al santuario, pero esta vez estuve en Fort Collins. De ahí tuve que ir a Boulder, donde estaba mi familia más cerca, donde lo tomaron mal y por ataque arrestaron a Eliseo Jurado, al papá de mis niños, sin ninguna razón. Lo arrestaron, estuvo en la cárcel. Él sigue peleando su caso igual que yo. El 2018 pagué yo y la comunidad, trabajé en mi campaña No Más Chuecos, educando a la comunidad a no usar documentos falsos que tienen serias consecuencias. El 2016 nació mi hija Elizabeth Jurado, donde lo tuve con parteras. Era un gran riesgo para mí después de 2 cesáreas de haber tenido. A la semana vino a visitarme el congresista Negus y la congresista Alejandro Ocasio. Ese mismo año me otorgó el perdón el gobernador actual, Cherry Polis. Duré 5 años refugiada en la iglesia de Colorado. El 30 de octubre del 2021 me otorgaron mi stay legal con el apoyo político de Colorado. Tengo 5 meses viviendo fuera de la iglesia. Ahora estoy en mi casa, yo y mis hijos en Boulder. Se siente tan diferente disfrutar la vida fuera de un encierro y el estrés de mi libertad, aunque mis niños quieren más cosas ahora. Ahora estoy luchando mi caso en reabrirlo y poder ser ciudadana americana, ya que mis hijos son nacidos aquí. He contribuido con el país con más de 20 años viviendo. El año de 1986 pasó la amnistía con el presidente Reagan, donde mucha gente pudo arreglar sus estatus migratorios. Y así muchos quedaron en limbo porque no vieron la importancia de tener documentos. Son 36 años ya que ha pasado todo esto y después de eso no ha pasado nada con inmigración y en lo federal. Es lo que ocupamos ahora, una reforma migratoria. Mi hermano de lucha, Omar Gómez, en marzo del 2022 tuvo que alzar la voz manejando su bicicleta de Denver hasta Washington, D.C. por 41 días. Estuvo en huelga de hambre una semana, donde sacrificó su vida por todos nosotros. Tuve la oportunidad de hablar con varios senadores y congresistas y la comunidad inmigrante ahora se está levantando en varios estados, ahora más que todos los activistas independientes. Ya estamos cansados de juegos políticos, por eso les pido que salgan ustedes a votar en las elecciones. Para cerrar, me gustaría pedirle 20 segundos de silencio a una persona muy querida, que es como mi familia, perdió la vida, se llama Kendall, son miembros de la coalición de Boulder, a Barbara and Fred Richard. Gracias.
Hello, I will be translating all that for Ingrid. Hello, good morning. My name is Ingrid Encalada La Torre. I migrated to the U.S. in the year 2000 in search of my American dream and also escaping the poverty in my country. My trip to America was extremely difficult, and having to leave my family behind made it that much harder. I was welcomed by my auntie and uncle in Colorado. In 2003, I made the decision to buy a false security number in the black market. The system obligated me to do this, for I was not eligible to work or go to school without one. By doing this, I was able to work at a nursing home. I was in charge of looking after elderly people. I fed them, washed dishes. It was a very difficult job. And I was also able to enroll in school. In the year 2010, I was arrested by the local police department for using false documents, and they gave me an immigration hold for being undocumented in this country. I spent 3 years locked up without being able to see my eldest son, Bryant, who was 2 years old since he was the only one at the time. Separating myself from him broke my soul. I would no longer see him again since they told me that I was going to be deported to my country. It was very, very difficult for us. One day, the sheriff spoke to me and told me they had paid my bond. They told me I was free, and I was extremely surprised. In the early morning, I was released, but immigration was waiting for me outside those doors. I was handcuffed from head to toe and was treated like a criminal. Forward, the IRS, I was able to pay the IRS. I did 4 years of fine, paid thousands of dollars, and in 2016, my case was denied, for I had a felony 6 for identity theft. 2017 was when the nightmare came to me and my community. In 2017, my family and I decided to refuge in the Mountain View Friends Church with the Quakers in Denver for 6 months. They granted me a legal stay for 5 months to appear in court without fear that time I'd be forgiven by the governor. I got a pardon from the governor. I had no choice but to continue fighting for justice. I re-entered sanctuary at Fort Collins. I moved to Boulder, where they took, and then I moved to Boulder. There, they took the father of my children, arrested him, and he was in jail. He is currently also still fighting his case just like me. In 2018, the community and I worked on my No Más Chuecos campaign. I was able to educate the community on the community on the use of false documents and how there was serious consequences if you did that. In 2019, my daughter Elizabeth, my third child, and that's my daughter Elizabeth, was born, and I had her at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Boulder. And since I couldn't leave the church, I was in sanctuary, it was of great risk. I had my baby in the church, and during that time, the Congressman Neguse came to support me, and also Alexandra Ocasio came to visit that same year. I lasted 5 years as in sanctuary. On October 30th, 2021, I was granted a stay of removal for a year with the political support of Colorado. I have been living in my own home for 5 months now, me and my children in Boulder in our own home. It feels so different to enjoy life outside of the church, and I don't have as much stress, and my freedom means everything. Although I can't have pets in the place, my children are begging for a pet. There's still a couple of things that we wish we had. Now I am struggling to reopen my case. It's quite difficult to become an American citizen. I have 3 children who were born here. I have also contributed to the country for over 20 years by paying my taxes. In the year 1986, when President Reagan was in presidency, many people were able to fix their immigration status. And so many hit the limbo because they did not see the importance of having documents at the time. It is 36 years since this has all happened, and nothing has happened at the federal level. This is why all of us immigrants deserve immigration reform. There's 12 million of us now. And in March 2022, my brother Omar Gomez had to raise his voice. He bicycled to Washington, D.C. for 41 days and went on a hunger strike for a total of 5 days. He sacrificed his life for all of us. And I also had the opportunity to talk to several senators and congressmen, and the immigrant community is rising up in several states now with a lot of independent activists. We are tired of these political games. That's why I asked you to go out and vote for these elections, because this is very important for all of us immigrants. Thank you.
I hope I can talk beyond the tears. It's heartbreaking to me. Each week we remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives and this community by giving half of our plate away to those organizations that share our values. Today the half plate is for the Boulder County Sanctuary Coalition. Today, Diana Solares, organizer for the coalition and wonderful translator, will tell us more about the coalition.
Alrighty, hello everyone. I'll go ahead and introduce myself now. My name is Diana Solares. I am a first-generation Latino-Americana. My parents migrated in different years, actually. My dad was born in Guatemala, migrated to America in 1960. My mother migrated from Honduras, very small town in Honduras. There's not a lot to do there. In the year 1996, and a year after that, I was brought into this world, and I'm always grateful for that move that my parents decided to do, because that's why I get to have all these opportunities and move in my life. And you know, they're living their American dream through me, and it's an absolute blessing. So our mission here at the Boulder County Sanctuary is to support immigration reform as a whole, and in particular to free Ingrid and her family to the inhumane immigration structures. We do this work through faith-based communities in the Boulder County area. And through the years, the Boulder County Sanctuary has supported Ingrid endlessly. They've helped her out with all her fundraisers, petitions, events, even supporting her small businesses from, you know, they also have helped a lot with her children and just really anything Ingrid needed. My work through the Boulder County Sanctuary Coalition has brought up a light on how broken our system is and how important our work is, and how important people like the Boulder Sanctuary Coalition people, how much the world just needs us. In early November, we celebrated Ingrid's stay of removal. That gave her the right to be able to leave Sanctuary whenever she wanted to without having to look over her shoulder and have to be afraid of being deported. Now, that was only granted to her for a year. Ingrid continues to live in this limbo of uncertainty and not knowing what her legal status is going to bring. As a community, we have made a promise to Ingrid to stand beside her till she is granted a permanent solution to her legal status. I'd like to personally thank the Boulder County Sanctuary Coalition for shining light and also encouraging and empowering people like Ingrid and even myself to speak up and not be afraid. Being part of this community has given me a lot of hope, the love I needed and the power I needed as a product of immigration, and this is only the beginning to our fight towards justice. Thank you.
Your donations today will not only help Ingrid, but will also help to fund Diana's position as coalition organizer. You can text your donation at the number on the screen, or if you are at the fellowship today, place a donation in the offering plate as it passes. Please give generously, as you so often do. To keep informed about the activities and volunteer opportunities of the Boulder County Sanctuary Coalition, this is for the people at home, please click on the link in the chat to join our BVUUF Immigration Justice email list. If you're here in person, there are several sign-up sheets in the fellowship hall after the service where you can put your name and your email address. As our musical reflection begins, we invite you to consider the following question. If you're on Zoom, you can write that answer in the chat. When and how has your family immigrated? When and how has your family migrated?
for the work of the fellowship and the work of the Boulder County Sanctuary Coalition, which is bringing dignity to human lives. We dedicate our efforts and our offerings. Now, I recognize we're a little late, but I don't want to keep us from our sharing of joys and concerns, this very sacred time in our congregation's weekly life. So if you're on Zoom and you have a joy or concern you'd like to share, you can type it into the chat and I will read it at the after anybody here who would like to share a joy or concern shares. So wherever you are, just tell us your name and where you live, and then share what is in your heart today. Beloveds, let us never forget that the challenges in this world can only be matched by our deep love and caring. And that even when we experience difficulties and see the difficulties in this world, we have the capacity, the agency, the compassion to create change. If others can create cruelty, we can bring love. May it be so.
Well, we get to make some more music together today. This may be a familiar hymn to some, 123 in the Gray Hymnal, Spirit of Life. However, our challenge today is to sing it both in English and in Spanish. So we'll sing it all the way through in English, and then all the way through in Spanish. The words will be up there. And if your body is cooperating with you today, you may rise. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of
don't know about you, but I'm loving singing in Spanish. This is like new muscles in my brain are turning back on. And speaking of Spanish, there's usually a Spanish conversation group today led by Mark Killinger, and he's not feeling well. So he asked me he says it's definitely not COVID, but he asked me to tell the group that if they want to meet in Mountain View Room without him, to go for it. This might be a good day to join that group and keep practicing our Spanish. A couple of other announcements. We still need a treasurer. Now, I know that job can sound daunting, but really, if you just are not scared of numbers, and you're curious, and you even like numbers, you can contact the Leadership Development Committee. Their email address is going in the chat, and it's a pretty easy email address, leadershipdevelopment@bvuuf.org. If you want to get involved in our immigration justice work, you can add your name to the form that's going to the chat again, or sign up something at during coffee hour for those of you who are here. And please do stay for coffee hour, because Ingrid and Diana have some yummy Mexican corn and some aguas frescas. See? Is that close enough to what I saw you doing in there? And Ingrid has some items that she is selling from Central and South America to help support herself. So there's lots going on in coffee hour today. And you can also add a leaf to our tree that we are creating. There's a little spot in the corner. You can add a leaf about what inspires you to social justice or to your own spiritual practices. So lots going on. And we will extinguish our chalice at this point. Please join me in the words. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, or the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. And let us go forth, enlarging our circle more and more, recognizing the deep humanity of each person, and bringing our love and compassion to the work of justice. May it be so.
So feel free to take off, but we are going to sing one more song. So you do what you need to do, but have some fun and join us if you like.
Yeah, well, don't go anywhere. Stand up, but don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So maybe y'all are familiar with how they do funerals in New Orleans, and they go to the graveyard and leave the deceased person there, and then they have what they call a second line, and that's going back into the neighborhood and around town, with hundreds and hundreds of people sometimes singing New Orleans jazz and songs like this one we're going to sing now. Maybe you're like me, that the idea of a home in the sky, a heaven that we go to after we're gone, isn't not all that relevant to you, but I would just suggest that what we're really talking about here is manifesting the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, here and now, in this place, in this time. That's our job, huh? And so we celebrate being able to do that.
I was sitting by my window on a cold and cloudy day, Well, the